We're going to get started in a moment. Okay, good afternoon. At this time, I would like to ask our IT professionals to start the audio tape recordings of the regular meeting and to admit any members of the public who have chosen to listen to the meeting online. And I'll pause for verbal confirmation.
Okay, IT has let the public in.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Washington, and I serve as Interim General Counsel and Assistant Secretary of the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, also known as Atlanta Housing. Before the regular meeting is called to order, please consider the following announcements. We welcome the members of the public who have joined us in person at Roosevelt Hall, located at 660 Atlanta Student Movement Boulevard, Southwest, Atlanta, Georgia, for this regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners of Atlanta Housing. We also welcome the members of the public who have joined this meeting via audio conference. There's also an option to view the meeting live streamed. Members of the public can find the link in the notices section on the Atlanta Housing website. Access to the live stream is accessible by accessing the link in the notices section entitled Atlanta Housing Board Docs. Please be advised that any members of the public who wish to address the board during the time for public comment period must have signed up on the public speaker sign-up sheet at the front door of the meeting room prior to the time the meeting is called to order, or have sent in a comment by the time set in the notice of the meeting. A link to the meeting agenda, board resolutions, and presentation materials are available for review by the public by accessing the link on the Atlanta Housing website at www.atlantahousing.org/notices.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Kirsch, and I serve as Vice Chair of the Board of Commissioners. I'm now calling this regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, to order. Today is Wednesday, March 27th, 2024, and the time is 2:07 p.m. Will the Interim General Counsel please take roll to determine a quorum for the meeting?
Commissioner Stewart. Commissioner Stewart. Vice Chair Kirsch.
Here.
Commissioner Alvarado.
Present.
Commissioner Elliott.
Here.
Commissioner Faruqi.
Here.
Commissioner Hooker.
Here.
Commissioner Martin.
Here.
Madam Vice Chair, there is a quorum present.
Thank you. The agenda has been presented to the board for review and comment. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move. Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Alvarado and seconded by Commissioner Hooker. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions, motion carries.
Commissioners, the minutes of the regular Board of Commissioners meeting held on February 28, 2024 are before the board for review and comment. Are there any proposed corrections to the minutes of the regular Board of Commissioners meeting?
All right, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on February 28, 2024?
So move.
It's been moved by Commissioner Alvarado and seconded by Commissioner Faruqi. Any discussion related to the motion to approve the minutes of the February 28, 2024 meeting? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions, motion carries. Thank you. Members of the public who wish to address the board signed up on the public speaker's sign-up sheet as they entered the meeting. Each speaker who has signed up will be called to the podium and will have 3 minutes to address the board. After those members of the public who are here to speak finish, we will read any questions received in advance via telephone or email. Have any members of the public signed up to speak, Ms. Washington?
Madam Vice Chair, no members of the public have signed up to speak, nor did we receive any comments in advance of the meeting to present to the board.
Excellent, thank you. This ends the public comment portion of the meeting. At the Board of Commissioners' September 22nd, 2021 meeting, the board approved a consent agenda protocol. There are 8 resolutions appearing below that received unanimous votes of approval at the Board of Commissioners Real Estate Committee meeting held on March 20th, 2024. The collective group of resolutions on the consent agenda will be approved by a single motion to adopt all resolutions in the affirmative majority of the vote of the Board of Commissioners. If discussion on any resolution or resolutions is desired by a commissioner, the commissioner must make that desire known to the vice chair immediately following the reading of the consent agenda items, and the resolutions will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Or at the discretion of the vice chair, a discussion may occur prior to the vote on the consent agenda resolutions. Moreover, if a commissioner simply wants his/her vote to be specifically recorded on any particular item, separate votes may be taken on the resolutions. Will the interim general counsel please identify the 8 resolutions on the consent agenda for the record?
Yes, Madam Vice Chair. Commissioners, before you are copies of the following consent agenda resolutions. Resolution number 2413, the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia seeks authorization to submit a disposition application to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for approximately 3.7 acres of age vacant land for the Bowen Phase 1 development in furtherance of the Bowen Homes Choice Neighborhoods Implementation Grant activities. Resolution number 2414, the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia seeks authorization to amend business terms in support of the low-income housing tax credit resyndication and debt restructuring for the rehabilitation of Columbia Heritage Senior Residences. Resolution number 2415, the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia seeks authorization to submit a disposition application to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for the approximately 1.76 acres for the Phase 3 development in furtherance of the redevelopment of the former A.H. Herndon Home site. Resolution 2416, Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia seeks authorization to submit a disposition application to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for approximately 2.4 acres of the former A.H. Herndon Homes public housing site for the development of a retail grocery store. Resolution number 2417, the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia seeks authorization to submit a disposition application to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for approximately 1.07 acres for the Civic Center Phase R1 development in furtherance of the redevelopment of the AH Civic Center site. Resolution 2418, the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia seeks authorization of revised business terms, energy performance contract prepayment amount, and to take all actions necessary to consummate the rental assistance demonstration program conversion closing of Cosby Spear High Rise. Resolution number 2419, the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia seeks authorization to take necessary actions to submit an application for the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development Rental Assistance Demonstration and Section 18 Blend Program for Ashley College Town 1. And resolution number 2420, the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia seeks authorization to take necessary actions to submit an application for the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development Rental Assistance Demonstration and Section 18 Blend Program for Capital Gateway 1.
Thank you. May I have a motion to consider, adopt, and approve the consent agenda containing the resolutions numbered 2413, 2414, 2415, 2416, 2417, 2418, 2419, and 2020.
So moved.
Excuse me, 2420. Thank you. May I have a second? It has been so moved by Commissioner Hooker and seconded by Commissioner Elliott. Is there any discussion related to the consent agenda resolutions? All right, very good. Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Great to see progress on Civic Center and to see a grocery store being contemplated and moving forward. So excited to see that move off consent agenda. So thanks, everyone. I think we are ready for our presentation of other resolutions.
Commissioners, before you is a copy of the resolution number 2421, which seeks authorization to submit its fiscal year 2025 Moving to Work annual plan to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development.
May I have a motion to consider resolution 2421? May I have a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Elliott and seconded by Commissioner Faruqi. I believe we have Mr. Vraniker here to present.
Paul got a little shorter. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Vincent Taylor. I serve as the Director of MTW Planning and Reporting. And I'm here before you today to seek approval or request approval to submit our our fiscal year 2025 Moving to Work annual plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Next slide, please. Our 2025 MTW plan represents year 3 of our 5-year strategic plan, and those 6 goals that we have in that strategic plan, they provided the guidance to develop this and prepare this MTW plan. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder, the MTW planning process really begins in the fall and really concludes with the submission of our MTW plan to HUD in the spring. In that planning process, we have a 30-day comment period, and each planning process, to answer some questions from the Operations Committee, we increase our outreach strategies. So that includes email blasts, community and portal postings, social media listings, things to that nature to try to get the word out as much as possible. Our efforts this year reached over 14,000 people, and that yielded a turnout of about 111 people, which is all of our stakeholder briefings plus the public hearing. This turnout is very consistent with the turnouts that we've had over the last 10 years. Aside from two outlier years where we had a higher turnout when the meetings were online only. They were exclusively online. Next slide, please. This information that's before you right now is a projection of households served as of June 30th, 2025. So we're looking 15 to 18 months when we started this process to where we think we're going to be at the end of 2025. We continue to estimate that 96% of our families will fall in the ELI and VLI categories, which is extremely low income and very low income. And the majority of those families will be 30% of area median income or below, which is about $30,000, $30,650 a year, and equates out to about $15 an hour or less. The pie chart breaks down our projection by assistance type. As a reminder, we'll start with DPA as our down payment assistance. RAD PBV is our rental assistance demonstration project-based voucher program, and LIHTC is our low-income housing tax credits. So overall, we expect to add 767 new households in 2025, and this projection reflects newly created units occupied by families at the end of the fiscal year. Okay, these new households served includes new unit occupancy for 138 households at 3 properties through new home flex agreements, 405 households served via home again, and 224 new households served or assisted with DPA wards. Next slide, please. So not to confuse, but to try to clarify, in FY 2025, we plan to create 1,455 affordable units, and the difference between what we projected on the last slide and this slide is the last slide talked about occupied units, and this one talks about actual unit counts, new units through financial closings, developments, things of that nature. So under development, we are planning for 6 financial closings that'll deliver 1,029 units. And we plan to execute again 3 new home flex agreements that will deliver 138 new units. And under our home ownership, we plan to create 229 new home ownership opportunities, where 64 of those opportunities are on aged land. Next slide, please. Well, we also plan to preserve the affordability of 1,114 of existing units, and that'll be done by renewing existing home flex agreements, 11 home flex agreements that expire in FY 2025, and that will preserve the affordability of 868 units. And we also have plans to convert 3 communities with public housing units into 3 communities with project-based voucher units that preserves the affordability under the RAD program using Section 8 assistance. Next slide, please. This is some administrative stuff that we're planning during the year, such as continuing the administrative closeout activities of our 2014-15 Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant Award for our university home site, and then administering the activities under our 2022 Choice Neighborhoods Implementation Grant Award to transform our Bowen home site. So we're going to close out one and then start another. Beginning or continuing infrastructure activities to advance planned revitalization rehabilitation projects, and then blending BABA, HOTMA, Inspire, and other HUD requirements into our current operations and MTW activities as required. That is a quick overview of our MTW plan for 2025. Are there any questions? Yes.
Vincent, can you remind me what the acronyms BABA, HOTMA, and Inspire stand for?
Ooh. BABA is, forgive me if I get this wrong, Commissioner Hooker, it's Build America, Buy America. Okay. HOTMA, Housing Opportunities through Modernization Act, and Inspire is some national, thank you. All right, these HUD acronyms and phrases, they don't always add up to easy translation.
Commissioner Alvarado?
I'll just say a question, more of a comment. Just want to make sure that I acknowledge that the chair, who's not here, that he really wanted to ensure that this wasn't in the consent agenda, but it was taken out so that the other board members would have an opportunity to hear firsthand what was being considered, and that way you could weigh in as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge that for the record of his thinking of fellow board members to ensure that they had an opportunity to weigh in as well.
Very good. Commissioner Freaky?
A comment and then a question. So one, it is really great to see home ownership and building equity as a key cornerstone of the
Right.
strategy moving forward. And I know that we've been building our efforts with down payment assistance, et cetera. So it's great to see that, because we know that, intergenerational poverty and challenges, building equity within families is hugely important for that. So I just wanted to note that it's good to see that as a, growing component in our strategy, number one. The second question and observation I had was, I developed an appreciation for what it means to have MTW status when we were actually going through the process to name our next CEO.
Right.
It was one of the reasons why there was a lot of national interest in the role and in the work that Atlanta has done historically, and our capacity to do interesting new things without a lot of red tape. And this year, obviously, the focus is on making sure we execute really well, because we have some big federal grants and transformational neighborhood initiatives, Bowen, but Thomasville Heights and others, that have made a pretty big agenda for this agency. But one thing which I had hoped to see that I don't see in this plan is some mention of innovation and trying new things. And I'm interested in, number one, what room we will have in terms of our planning and budget to pilot something that is, for example, there's a lot of discussion nationally in terms of affordable housing. Now the administration, the current administration and the White House is also focused on amplifying that. But the biggest challenge is how do you sort of have shared equity and equity over time, even if homeownership out the gate is not an option? And how do you bring in the private sector to maybe try and facilitate that? So that's one example. Another example is, Terry, you were, in charge of leading this effort at the city years ago. I thought the neighborhood stabilization program was very innovative, very interesting and different in the way it kind of solved for the financing challenges and over time tried to sort of mitigate that. So I guess I'm asking, what room do we have in terms of trying new things, whether it's 3D printed homes or public-private partnerships to think about, more home ownership oriented initiatives, or revitalization efforts that do leverage federal grants and funds, but allow us to try different things. So can you speak to that, both in terms of the capacity that this plan leaves us to try different things versus like, are we kind of married to this, the specifics in here? And then two, how do you, your team and the agency, think about that and how we can be supportive of such efforts?
Thank you for your question, Commissioner. One, I will point out that we do have a pilot program in there. It's our modular homes for home ownership, so we are trying new things. So that is in the plan now. Generally, putting things into the plan, it takes a year of planning and analysis to put it into that plan. So with regard to innovations, we have some flexibility, but we don't have the flexibility to do something spot on, particularly if we're changing HUD rules. So at the very minimum, we have to inform HUD that, hey, you have this rule here that we're going to modify with our MTW flexibility. But we do have, per our agreement, a little bit of leeway that if something comes up, we can try it, start to implement it, put it in our end of the year report, put it back in the next year plan, and keep it moving and being able to track outcomes to either continue it, modify it, or close it out. But overall, we do have a innovation in there under the modular homes. And the other things that I will speak to this very quickly is that Atlanta Housing has been MTW for a long time, and we have led a lot of activities. And dare I say, is Paul around? We have, a lot of other agencies have followed us, so I don't want to say that we're innovated out, but we have innovated a lot. And I don't know if anyone knows this as far as the commission and anyone in the room, but a lot of the things that HUD allows us to do is the result of MTW flexibilities, the HOTMA or changes, actually the triennial recertifications, biennial inspections, emergency housing vouchers, all the result of a lot of MTW activity.
Well, I guess I'm just hoping we continue to keep our innovation mantle going forward, right? So it's sort of one is never innovated out because
No.
we're learning this from the way the world is
Right.
moving with technology and whatnot. And then one follow-up question, and maybe, I apologize, I'm not one of the commissioners that is on the UDC board. How does that play into this, or does that not play into this? Is it totally separate? Can you speak to that, Terry?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon again, Terry Lee, President and Chief Executive Officer for Atlanta Housing. With the AUD, that is actually an innovative concept where we utilized our powers under state law to develop an affiliate that would solely be focused on the redevelopment of public land, similar to the social housing model in Europe. What is possibly shown within the plan would be the disposition of Thomasville Heights. You may recall a few months ago, the commissioners authorized a resolution which will allow AH to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with AUDC for the redevelopment of some of our sites. We've executed that document. 2 sites that we're looking at would be Thomasville Heights and the disposition of the second phase of Inglewood. So we're utilizing our powers in working with the affiliate in that way. But if I could just digress for a moment, I agree with you. We can never be innovated out. I actually learned that from you at the City of Atlanta when we worked on ATL Stat and when we were moving forward with the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. When I look at innovation, I'm thinking of it from a leadership perspective in three ways. One, really innovation from our staff and understanding the ideas that our team members may have to further our efforts for redevelopment of housing as well as services to our residents. Second would be development and financing innovation. How do we utilize our powers, especially under the MTW program, to be more creative and more flexible in development techniques, but also in financing. And then third, really looking at what we're currently doing under MTW and how we can do something different and even better. To that end, under the staff innovation, and I was hoping to announce this next week, but we will be launching an Atlanta Housing Idea, so AH Ideas, where we will be do a competition among our employees to collect some of the best ideas that we can actually execute and implement in moving forward with the services we provide. From a development perspective, we're looking at how to be innovative and creative around our financing structures. We recognize that if we're truly going to meet the demand of 10,000 units that we set forth as a goal, and the goal that the mayor set forth of 20,000 units or even more, that we will have to be creative in our public-private sector partnership relationships as well as our financing. An example of that would be an action that was taken by the board on a project that I directly led as your previous CEO, which was the disposition of Jonesboro Road South. And in that effort, we actually worked with a for-profit developer who's bringing in a model of a myriad of affordable housing developers to assist in repopulating that site with mixed-income housing. And then the last piece, under the MTW flexibility, we were just we know we have the ability to be a leader across the country, but what I'm more concerned about are what are we doing differently today. And so one of the things that we're examining along with Paul and the great work from his team are the current flexibilities we have under MTW, how we're utilizing it, are we maximizing utilization of those flexibilities, but also what other creative things can we do. We were very fortunate under COVID to use our MTW flexibility under our Housing Choice Voucher Program, especially on the inspection standpoint. So when you think about if you're a private resident, if you're a resident going to a private multifamily development, you typically are doing a self-certification on an inspection. For Atlanta Housing, we typically had to inspect the unit prior to our residents being able to occupy that space. We've adopted the flexibility where we will allow residents to do a self-certification, and that speeds up the process for them to be able to occupy the unit faster, and we come back 30 to 45 days later to do to just double check and verify or validate the self-certification. So 100% agree with you. I do not believe we can be innovated out. I am really leaning into some of the things that I've learned over the course of my career, but also in working with my colleagues in different sectors so that we can make sure that we're maximizing and we're just not growing stale at the Housing Authority and lifting up these efforts.
I'm just curious about the urban development part of housing and urban development. We talk a lot about housing, right? And my assumption is the establishment of this agency believe that they work in tandem. Housing would lead to urban development. And I'm wondering if we talk a lot about developing these verticals and these units, but what is the impact in regards to the communities in which they're in? And what is the and how does it help transform communities where it can be more viable, there's more amenities? And I think we're missing in the storytelling an opportunity to be able to articulate that as well. So when we talk about homes and people living in quality housing and living in dignity, what about the community they're in? And articulating that as well and lifting that up too, and showing how the development we're doing is catalytic, because I think people would want to be a part of that, right? So I just wanted to ensure that when we're having these conversations and when we're presenting in these opportunities that we also offer what it looks like vertically and what it looks like horizontally in regards to a comprehensive understanding of what our investment will lead to in regards to transforming the lives of communities and people.
Commissioner, you're 100% correct. And literally just yesterday, we had this conversation, myself, Trish O'Connell, and our Chief Information Officer, Tori Martin, in understanding how the redevelopment of the existing communities we have, how it would have a catalytic effect on the economic viability of the neighborhoods, and ultimately the residents. But more importantly, how do we tell that story? Because there was a significant gap between public housing that was demolished. A young lady shared with me last night that it was 14 years ago that she was moved from her community in Thomasville. And so when public housing was demolished and the redevelopment of mixed income communities, what happened within that gap, but more importantly, what's coming back, and how can our existing residents participate in the economic viability, but more importantly, how can it be catalytic to the development and the transformation of the neighborhood? One of the actions you've taken in this board meeting actually proves to that, and that's the redevelopment of Herndon Homes, and the fact that we're moving forward with the grocer for that site. When we, and I was on the city side when we first started speaking about Herndon Homes, but I can tell you that was the plea from the community, that in the redevelopment of Herndon Homes, one, can we come back? And then two, how can we solve the food crisis we have within our neighborhood? And I believe that the grocery store that we're doing will help to do that, but it'll also serve as a catalyst to other activity within that development, as well as a catalyst that'll serve other areas within the neighborhood. And you will see, especially as we talk through the budget process, which will be led by Commissioner Faruqi, you will see where we will be talking about innovation in our budget, as well as that catalytic storytelling. Because one of the things that I recognized as I was going through the process to become the next CEO of Atlanta Housing is that our story is not being told. And there's a lot of great work that we're lifting up, but connecting the dots as to what housing means to comprehensive community and economic development is not necessarily being clearly relayed. I think we've done an excellent example of that with Choice under the leadership of Ernestine Gary. And so how do we take that same messaging across every aspect of the agency that we're working in is something that we're going to be very vigilant about. Yes, sir. Thank you.
It strikes me that this conversation on innovation and on whole communities is really important things to center in our work. And we don't innovate for its own sake. We innovate to solve problems, right? And just this conversation around Thomasville and the creation of the AUDC, which was done through our powers, is a response to the fact that when we plan and develop in silos, we're not serving community as well as we could, right? And when we are treating public lands of APS and MARTA and the city and Atlanta Housing as unique and separate, we are potentially falling short of our goals to community residents and building a whole community. And so I think that's a great example of innovation and service to problem solving. I appreciate the modular reference and the neighborhood stabilization as we think about, what feels like an elevating conversation around vacant and abandoned lots in our city. And that pilot that you referenced, plus, the learnings from neighborhood stabilization, I think is a great thing for us to continue to elevate. And so this has been a fruitful conversation, and appreciate having the moment to focus on it a little bit.
Thank you, Commissioner Kirsch, for sort of articulating it that way and bringing it home, because really that's the point, right? And the only reason why I know that NSP was impactful is because I know what Edgewood looked like before and after, right? And if you haven't gone through those areas and seen what has happened, then you might miss what really that was about. It was really about transformation. I just wanted to also add that this is also a great moment to be able to better tell our story, because the mayor's office is focused on neighborhood revitalization and transformation. So at least the two places, both Bowen and Thomasville Heights, where they will be taking the lead in telling some of that story, I want us to be very clear what Atlanta Housing's role has been in delivering that and what it's going to be in the future. Because that can sometimes also get lost, and it is in our interest to make sure that at least in those two neighborhoods where we have a lot of help from the mayor telling the story, are we also making sure that our piece of the solution is is visible to people. So just wanted.
Excellent. Any other questions or discussion for Mr. Taylor? Excellent. Well, I appreciate it. It's great to have the opportunity to hear it directly. Hearing no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries. This concludes the resolutions to be presented to the board at this time. Is there a report from the President and CEO?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a report. Good afternoon again. First and foremost, I want to commend the staff, the Atlanta Housing team, for the work that you saw presented here today. The actions that this board has approved do a little bit more than just provide housing, but it really provides a catalytic way for us to fulfill the commitment within our strategic plan. The actions taken today by the Board of Commissioners impact the development and preservation of over 1,200 units of housing. And those 1,200 units of housing represent a 75% affordability rate. We moved forward with actions that continue the efforts along Bowen Homes. We moved forward with actions that will continue to lift up Civic Center, a project that lay dormant for several years, as well as we're expediting the redevelopment of Herndon Homes. What I'm also excited about is that one of the things when we adopted our strategic plan last year, we were clear that the strategic plan would guide the actions of the agency from an initiative standpoint and even a funding standpoint. The key, though, is how do we align the strategic plan to the Moving to Work action plan as well as the agency's annual budget. And so as you see the adoption of the items that we're bringing forth to you, they all are in alignment and not in conflict to make sure that we're not just doing the work, but we're literally contributing upon the impact that we stated would happen within the strategic plan. Excellent. And so when I think about what I would like to share with you this month, one of the things that was really interesting to me on day 2 of serving as your CEOs, we had a town hall. And within that town hall, I asked a question of our team members who had read our strategic plan and actually who understood the strategic plan. Less than 30% of the hands went up. And I was actually, I didn't take that as a failure because I was excited and I was happy about the fact that the team members in that room, the 300 employees we have at Atlanta Housing, felt safe enough to honestly say that. But it also showed me that there was work that myself as well as my leadership team needed to do. And so we've been working pretty diligently on what we call a refresh of the strategic plan. And one of the activities you see in front of you is a screensaver that we launched a few weeks back. The screensaver actually shows each one of our goals on a rolling basis, and it's on all age devices, on our desktops, our laptops, as well as our handheld devices. I have been stopped in the elevators by our employees saying, Terry, I got a copy of the strategic plan now. And I know the 6 goals. I know that we're going to create 10,000 units. I know that we're going to do a better job of communicating, and I have an ideal about partnerships. And so just this one little effort, just making sure we have this screensaver, is reinvigorating a conversation around our team as to what we can do to make sure that we're embracing the strategic plan, but more so embracing it, understand why. What is our why and why we're doing the work. In addition to that, we talked a little bit about the Herndon groundbreaking. I was excited today for one of the actions you took was the approval of the disposition of the application to HUD for the grocery store. Commissioner Faruqi and Commissioner Elliott, you may remember that our HUD representative stated at the groundbreaking that if Atlanta Housing submits the disposition application in April, we'll be able to move forward this summer. And I shook my head and said that we're going to submit it. And so a first step of that action was today.
I've never seen that happen for a federal agency to
Yeah.
say, if you ask,
Yes.
they'll say
Yes. That's called the leadership and the charisma of Atlanta Housing to actually get that to move forward. But we are moving forward with action. So the action that you approved here today will allow us to submit the application, and the team is working feverishly to have that submitted within the next few days. But what I'm really happy about with Herndon is that we're not just moving forward with phase 2. We already have funding for phase 3. And so we'll be closing on an additional 201 units this year in order to start the groundbreaking of phase 3. Additionally, one of the things that we're moving with the urgency of now. And there is a different level of intensity that we have as an agency in lifting up these activities. But at the same time, we need to have fun. And we need to understand that it's more than just about the work we do within our buildings and within our communities, but how can we be an extension and an impact to the larger community here in Atlanta? And we do that through AH Cares. And with AH Cares, we typically do volunteer efforts across the city. This month alone, we were able to do one at our own site, which was Bowen Homes. We did a cleanup of the neighborhood area, and that was this past Saturday. But also, we worked with the Atlanta Community Food Bank to pack over 17,000 pounds of food. And in packing over 17,000 pounds of food, we have the ability now to impact meals for over 12,000 families. And that is really important because it's the larger part of what we need to do to give back. And this is a volunteer effort that is led by our employees. And I will tell you that our employees not only participate in that volunteer effort, but they also at every given chance do a 5K. We also we participated in the Atlanta Food Bank Hunger Walk a few weeks ago, and I believe we have a 5K that's coming up next Saturday as well that we'll be participating in. And then, Vincent talked a little bit about Atlanta Housing being a leader in this conversation. And I will tell you, nationally we are, and locally we will continue to be. But one of the things that we've been hosting over the last 6 to 7 months would be a PHA retreat, where we have individuals from across the country come in to understand about our work. And so we hosted Ecclesia Ventures just this past week ago. About 40 participants from across the country came in to understand exactly what we're doing here at Atlanta Housing. Specific focus was on our resident services as well as our Choice Neighborhood program. I will tell you, there were several individuals within the audience who want to talk to me about my journey to become CEO, because they're serving in interim capacities as well, and they want to understand how to serve in an interim capacity, lead an organization at the same time you're seeking to be the ultimate leader of the organization. And so Atlanta Housing has a very strong reputation. People are leaning into us, but what I'm excited about is it gives us the opportunity to lean into them. And so while folks are learning, organizations and folks are learning from us, we have the opportunity to learn from them as well. And then on last week, we participated with the Atlanta Committee for Progress in a tour of the West Hollowell corridor. And that is literally looking at one of the transformation corridors that the mayor has under his neighborhood efforts. But the ACP was specifically interested in understanding about Bowen and understanding the comprehensive fabric of not just building the houses, but what will we do from a people standpoint as well as a neighborhood standpoint to bring back the economic vitality of that corridor. They will be touring Thomasville Heights this week in order to make decisions as to how they can support the mayor's work, but also our work that we're lifting up in order to make sure that we make whole communities. And we all know that it is Women's History Month. And this month, Atlanta Housing has been intentional about lifting up all of our employees, Mr. Vaughn, all of our employees we've lifted up, but we wanted to give specific focus to the women that serve this organization. We know that 37 years ago, the celebration and impact of women's history moved from 1 week to a full month. And in moving to that full month, it was really around recognizing the contribution that women made over the years and decades that had somewhat not been recognized. And we wanted to lift that up. So you may have seen our social media campaign where we've been highlighting different employees, different women here within Atlanta Housing. We also took time to highlight Eleanor Roosevelt for all the work that she's done from a historical perspective for housing. But in addition to that, we are proud to recognize our commissioners. We are fortunate to have 3, I believe, we have the best non-paid volunteers within the city of Atlanta. But I really think it's important that we lift up our commissioners, because the 2024 theme for Women's History Month is really focused around women who advocate for equity, diversity, and inclusion. And that's what you all do every day by serving on the board for Atlanta Housing. So on behalf of Atlanta Housing, on behalf of myself, the team members we have here, and the team members who are not present, we want to thank you for your service. And at this time, we would like to just give you a small token of appreciation from the Atlanta Housing team. Absolutely. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. Madam Chair, that concludes my report. I will entertain any questions from the board at this time.
Wonderful. Any questions for our president and CEO?
I'm just going to say that today we're not sharing with the boys.
Really lovely. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right. Well, if there's no other business of this board, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Commissioner Hooker and seconded by Commissioner Elliott. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Adjourned at 2:50 p.m.
Thank you, Commissioners. For the directors of the Westside Affordable Housing, Inc., we will begin that meeting in approximately 2 minutes. We welcome our commissioners who are not the members of the Westside Affordable Housing Board to remain and listen. So, ready to get started. Okay, thank you. At this time, I would like to ask our IT professionals to confirm that the audio tape recordings are continuing for the special meeting of the Board of Directors of Westside Affordable Housing, Inc., and to admit members of the public who have chosen to listen to this meeting online, and I'll now pause for confirmation.
Hi, the recording is continuing. IT has admitted all people into the room. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Washington, and I serve as Assistant Secretary of Westside Affordable Housing, Inc., and Interim General Counsel of the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, also known as Atlanta Housing. Before the special meeting is called to order, please consider the following announcements. We welcome the members of the public who have joined us in person at Roosevelt Hall, located at 660 Atlanta Student Movement Boulevard, Southwest, Atlanta, Georgia, for this special meeting of the Board of Directors of Westside Affordable Housing, Inc. We also welcome the members of the public who've joined us this meeting via audio conference. Again, there's an option to view the meeting live streamed. Members of the public can find the link in the notices section on the Atlanta Housing website by accessing the link in the notices section entitled Atlanta Housing Board Docs. Please be advised that any members of the public who wish to address the board during the time for public comment period must have signed up on the public speaker sign-up sheet at the front desk of the meeting prior to the time the meeting is called to order, or have sent in a comment by the time set in the notice of the meeting. The live streaming link and copies of the meeting agenda and board resolution are available for review by the public by accessing the link on the Atlanta Housing website at www.atlantahousing.org/notices. With the approval of the president, I will now call this meeting to order. On behalf of the president of Westside Affordable Housing, Inc., I'm calling the special meeting of the Board of Directors to order. Today is Wednesday, March 27, 2024. The time is 2:53 p.m. I will now take roll to determine a quorum for this meeting. Director Stewart, Director Stewart, Director Kirsch,
Here.
Director Faruqi, Director Hooker, Director Lee. There is a quorum present. The agenda has been presented to the board for review and comment. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, may I have a motion to adopt the agenda and a second?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Hooker and seconded by Director Kirsch. Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please indicate by saying nay. And any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Okay, directors, before you is a copy of Resolution WAH 2401, seeking authorization for the sale and conveyances of the AH subject properties as described in the final settlement agreement of the litigation styled as Grady Redevelopment LLC, Capital Gateway LLC, Harris Redevelopment LLC, and Carver Redevelopment LLC versus the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, Georgia, et al. May I have a motion to consider Resolution WAH 2401 and a second?
Motion.
So move.
Second?
So I'm absolutely, apologies, Director, Commissioner Martin, I need one additional first from WH Director?
So move.
Okay. Okay, and I think we already had a second. Was that you, Commissioner, Director Kirsch? Director Faruqi, thank you. So it's been moved by Director Hooker and seconded by Director Faruqi. I will now do a very brief presentation for the board's information before we take the vote. The President, Terry Lee, had asked me, President of Westside Affordable Housing, Inc., Terry Lee, she's not President and CEO, just President of Westside Affordable Housing, Inc., asked me to just do a brief presentation to understand what we're doing today and the need for it. As I think you all are pretty familiar now, we've been working with Integral Development to consummate the closing of the conveyance of the approximately 63 acres of land that was the subject of the litigation and is now the subject of a settlement agreement ending that, intended to end that litigation. The AH board actually has already met and approved the conveyance, and we've sought HUD authorization to proceed with the closing. That resolution that the board approved, AH board approved, was on February 16th, 2022. We did receive HUD authorization on March 31st, 2023, and we have been working diligently with Integral to complete their due diligence so that they can be ready to proceed for closing, which is now scheduled to happen very soon. The reason we're having this special meeting of the Board of Directors of AH's affiliate, Westside Affordable Housing, Inc., is to provide our President, Terry Lee, with authorization to execute a few select closing documents for that closing that are required to be signed by Westside Affordable Housing as the member and manager of a few entities that hold title to some of the select parcels. Those parcels were acquired as off-site development sites for Capital Carver, Harrison Grady, were included in those revitalization agreements and plans, and will be conveyed as part of the closing. Just a very brief summary of the lawsuit settlement terms. It's the sale of approximately 54 acres on what's been named the further leverage properties at Capital, Grady, Carver, and Harris Homes. There's also going to be the conveyance of a 7-acre parcel at Capital Homes on Memorial Drive that's going to be solely developed and used exclusively as a public park, subject to the right of reversion back to AH if at any time it's not operated as a park. Consistent with the HUD approval and the board approval of settlement agreement, the development entities will pay AH the sum of $26 million as payment for the land based on the appraised value of the land. If any housing is built on the 54 acres that are being sold, which is the acres that are not the parkland, they will be subject to the City of Atlanta ordinances for inclusionary zoning and public subsidies, and will comply with those ordinances. If their housing is developed on any of the acreage that's not subject to those zoning ordinances, but otherwise requires affordable housing development, they have agreed to develop 10 to 15% of those rental units as affordable units, provided they're able to secure the necessary assistance from Atlanta Housing or any other public assistance that's available. AH will also make payments to Integral Development's entities under the settlement agreement, and those payments are for the termination of the development rights under the revitalization agreements, and for some development rights that actually were terminated previously to secure conveyance of the land for the development of the public natatorium, the new natatorium. AH and Integral's affiliate Carver Redevelopment LLC will actually also move forward with a joint development of the remaining 9 acres at Carver Homes, the former Carver Homes, for the development of single-family homes, and that will be happening very soon after the closing that will result in the lawsuit. And finally, and very importantly, at post-closing, or as part of the closing, I should say, an order of dismissal of the lawsuit will be held in escrow so that it can be filed with Superior Court immediately after the closing takes place. We are pleased to let you know that All of the development that was planned under the Hope 6 grants for the Harris Homes, Grady Homes, Capital Homes, and Carver Homes site has been completed. To date, 5 multifamily phases at Villages of Carver have been completed. That includes 757 multifamily units, of which 419 are age-assisted. We also developed a park and green space, a YMCA, and a branch of the Atlanta Fulton County Library System at Carver. And as I reported before, we're going to continue development of the single-family homes. We've finished 5 multifamily rental phases of Harris Homes, now called College Town, and that has involved the completion of 692 multifamily units, of which 464 are age-assisted. We've completed 5 multifamily rental phases of Grady Homes, now known as Arbor Point, and which has resulted in the completion of 628 multifamily units, of which 437 are age-assisted. And finally, we've completed 2 multifamily rental phases at Capital Homes, now known as Capital Gateway, and the completion of that has involved 421 multifamily units, of which 154 are age-assisted. At this point, I'd like to allow the directors to ask any questions they might have before we proceed with the vote.
So if I could, Lisa, thank you so much for that report. I think it is important to note, two things. One, this is a long-standing, as many of you are aware, litigation between the Housing Authority and Integral. And so in January of 2022, with the facilitation of the Office of the Mayor, the Housing Authority was able to reach a settlement agreement. As Lisa stated, that settlement agreement has since been approved by HUD. But what's really important when we think about the sites that we're looking to the sites or the properties that are in question, those 4 sites, currently have a total of about 2,400 units on those properties. And we're looking at close to 59% to 60% affordability. Now, when you think about it, that affordability is from a rental standpoint. And the redevelopment of the fully leveraged parcels will bring home ownership. And so we will work very closely to ensure some affordability from a homeownership perspective. But I think it is important to note the level of affordability that's currently on the site. And as we move forward to encourage the redevelopment of mixed income communities, we do have a significant amount of affordability currently on the existing parcels.
Thank you. Is there any discussion related to the motion? Additional discussion?
Is there an opportunity to receive annual updates or something as this progresses? I know that will be a disposition, but it's just been such a central, or maybe just a one-year update or something, and how it, I think I have some questions that don't really warrant digging in, because we don't maybe know the specificity around the 54 acres and how much of it is subject to IZ, and I know all of that will be worked out over time as things develop, but it would just be nice to have some visibility on what happens from here.
Yes, we will work with Integral to provide, at a minimum, an annual update on the activity that has taken place. And I would say, I want to thank the Board of Commissioners, because I believe a month ago, we approved a resolution that would give us an additional 6 months to close on these parcels. And I have personally been working very closely with Mr. Perry to make sure that we could answer any questions, any issues that were required to get us to a March 31st closing. And so we are working very diligently to get to a closing by the end of this month or shortly in April.
I wanted to make one comment for the clarity of the public. I think in addition to HUD approval, it notes here pretty clearly that the settlement and the final settlement agreement was approved by consent order of a Fulton County Superior Court in February of 2023. So we're not approving or changing anything today. All of that has already been approved by the Superior Court. One suggestion I had in line with Commissioner Kirsch's question, and wondering how we make sure that we're doing our part in ensuring that the outcome is what we intend here. It would be helpful perhaps to ask Integral at some point, or for them to share with you, and for it to come back in maybe the real estate committee, what sort of the site plan now looks like going forward, because seeing a visual will be helpful on a map on the acreage, as well as a lot of what is planned and mentioned here, just so we have a sense of what the future of the site is going to be, and getting updates beyond that would be fabulous, but it would be nice to get a holistic view of that sometime, and at some point in perhaps the real estate committee, that might be appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely work to make that happen.
If there's no further discussion, I'll call the vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Any abstentions? I'm hearing none. The motion is carried. If there's no further business of this board, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting and a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Faruqi and seconded by Director Hooker. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? And no abstentions? Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned at 3:05 p.m.